Welcome to Office Hours by Triple X Church. I'm your host, Carl Thomas. I'm a pastor, certified neural health coach, and the guy who frankly struggled with a lot of stuff we talk about here for over 20 years until I found freedom about a decade ago. In today's episode, I'm going to be jumping in and answering this question. How can I get past the shame of past sexual acts? That's what I will be discussing today, so make sure you're hanging there with me, recognizing no questions are off the table, and I'm going to be as honest with my answers as I possibly can be, so don't get offended. Without any further delay, let's jump in. Okay, so this question came into our Office Hours page. I've been through this cycle of telling friends about my porn use in different states, different churches, different times in my life, and it has certainly helped when I have. But one thing I can never seem to figure out or feel confident about is telling them about any specific sex acts I have done. I've done some things I'm so ashamed of, things I try to block out of my mind, things that call to mind questions about who I am and my sexuality and all sorts of scary thoughts, and I don't know what to do with them. I've told a counselor here or there before, or my old sponsor, but in this new season of life where I find myself struggling, still, I don't know what to do with those specific shameful acts. I realize that letting the light in can be so helpful, but I am unbelievably terrified and I don't know how to think about this sort of thing graciously. It feels full of shame and condemnation. Please help. All right, so, hey, this is a great question. I wrote the book When Shame Gets Real, so I think it's very timely, if you will, definitely in my wheelhouse. But a couple of things here. So sounds like you're still struggling with porn or masturbation, those sorts of things. You didn't obviously reveal what type of specific sexual acts you're worried about. Maybe it's attraction, maybe it's whatever. I don't know. Regardless, if you're still struggling with this stuff, please make sure that you are getting some help and you're seeking out recovery and you're plugged into a loving community, right? Some sort of supportive community, like a 12-step community. Maybe it's a church community. Maybe it's an online community like the Live Free community or our other programs, small groups online. Either, whatever it is, make sure you're plugged into some sort of ongoing supportive community. And I'll get into why that's so important later. As far as it seems like you like to separate, hey, I need to be honest with people, but I can't tell them about every little quote unquote dirty deed, right, that I've ever done. Well, first of all, accountability, being transparent doesn't mean that you have to reveal everything that you've ever done to everyone. Okay. Certain people you should not feel at all ashamed of or hesitant to necessarily share those details, but not everybody needs to know that. I do think that you need to be authentic. I do think you need to be real about your struggle. People need to be able to accept and love you for who you are, warts and all, right? We all struggle with stuff. You struggle with sex, other people struggle with overeating, whatever. We all have our own issues, and we all need to be able to accept each other regardless of those issues. The people that can't, well, that's what you call conditional love. That's no good, and that only feeds the shame monster. So you need to avoid those people and gravitate towards those who can accept you fully for who you are. That being said, even with that group of people, not all of them need to know every little detail about your sex life, okay? You can just be honest and say, hey, I'm struggling. You can tell them you deal with porn, masturbation. You could just say unwanted sexual behavior. That's still being authentic and honest and being accountable, and that's still going to help you. Just because you're not telling them that you did XYZ back in the day doesn't mean you're not being accountable or authentic or honest. It just means that they don't need to know that information. But there are certain people in your life, like your sponsor, like your maybe closest friends, like your spouse possibly, I don't know, like your therapist, that, yeah, they're the people that you might want to share that information with, because there might be things there to unpack that you need to actually talk about that could be related to past trauma and stuff like that that you need to go through so you can seek some healing in this area of your life. All that said, again, going back to the community, one of the reasons that a supportive, recovery-focused community is so important is because it kind of helps us in this shame area. See, understand, all of us, we grow up, we're mammals, and we all require this need for safety and community and connection. And so if we grow up in a situation where we're kind of robbed of that, right? We don't feel that connection. We feel abandonment. Maybe we've been rejected, whatever. That sense of safety gets jeopardized. And so then we go into adulthood And we don't want to tell people about these past sins of ours. I'm just using sins, quote unquote sins, all right, just to be clear. Because we're afraid that they're going to reject us like everyone else has. And that makes us feel even more unsafe. So we keep quiet. And that's why shame sets in. But in a recovery community like the Live Free community, you can be honest because you know that the other people in that community or in that support group all dealt with similar struggles. And so therefore they're going to accept you fully. They're not going to condemn you. They're not going to look down upon you. They're going to give you basically a form of unconditional love and acceptance because they've all been there. And so it's kind of training wheels for life. That's the way I like to put it. You're going to start seeing, hey, you know what? I can be honest about this stuff. And it doesn't necessarily lead to a lack of connection. It doesn't lead automatically to rejection. I can be honest and authentic and be safe at the same time. And that's huge. And when you start to understand that and realize that, yeah, you'll get better at sharing these things with other people in your life. I've have all sorts of different things that I've done throughout my life. Not everybody knows about everything. Okay. Certain people know everything. Certain people don't. And it's not because a lack of authenticity or a lack of honesty. It's just, you don't need to know that. We're not that close. And so that's fine. Okay. I wouldn't feel worried about that, but you definitely want to get past the shame of it because regardless of what you did, regardless of the decisions you made, regardless of the people you find yourself attracted to, all these things, there are roots to them, right? Usually some sort of emotional trauma or whatever. And again, we all have made mistakes. We all have messed up. You don't need to feel shameful or bad about it. It happened. It's okay. You are now seeking recovery. That's great. And we can all get past the sins of our past. And it's not something that you need to carry around with you feeling guilty about or shameful about for the rest of your life. At the time when you did these things, in essence, you were just trying to survive. You were doing what your brain said you needed to do to get through another day, to feel safe. And it happened. But, you know, there's a change. There's hope. It doesn't have to always be like that. And you can certainly get past the shame of your past. So hope that helps. If you have a question for me and you want to go, or you want me to answer it, go to xxchurch.com/office-hours. Submit your question there, and I will answer it in the upcoming weeks. That's about it. Have a great one.